Hey guys, just really quick, we wanted to let you know this coming episode is a live podcast we recorded at North Carolina Comic Con. And unfortunately, we had some issues with the audio in this one, just the crowded room and everything like that. It ended up our mics sound pretty muted, but we do think it was some great content. So we hope that you can muscle through some of the audio quality and enjoy the show. You're listening to an Anazao Ministries podcast.
Welcome to Finding God in Fandom. Hey y'all, how we doing? Yeah, we're coming to you live from North Carolina Comic Con in Durham, North Carolina. And we are Systematic Geekology. We are your priest to the geek for our podcast. And when we say priest to the geek, it doesn't mean that we're all priests. Some of us are not ordained. But what we mean by that word priest is that we see ourselves as mediators and curators between those things that we geek out on and the bigger questions with theology and philosophy, that most of the stories that we consume in the Geekverse and in fandom really hold within it some big questions that religion and philosophy ask as well. And we're not saying that Jesus is under every geeky rock, but often these stories we geek out on and consume often contain these big stories, like what does it mean to be human? What makes a hero? What makes a villain? What's the problem of evil? Is there purpose in this universe? Do I have a calling to a greater purpose? So all those things revolve around most of the stuff we geek out on. And so we're really excited that we can be a part of North Carolina Comic Con, to be a part of their panels. And thanks to Alan for giving us this space to have these conversations. And we're going to go down. We're going to treat this like a normal Systematic Geekology podcast, in the sense that we'll share who we are, what we're geeking out on, and lift up some topics. And then at the end, if we have time, we probably will lift some questions from you all of some of the things you geek out on and some of the questions that you wrestle with or that you see in those things that you're really fans about. So I am Will Rose. I am from Chapel Hill, North Carolina. Been a part of Systematic Geekology since its origin. And we'll talk about the origin story in a minute. Who else do we have here with us today?
I'm Joshua Knoll. I am one of the guys who kind of do this with Will.
That's right. It's true.
Just kind of adding to what you were talking about earlier. You know, I'm a big Kingdom Hearts, Darkwing Duck, all of our
drinking contest. I drink every time you mention
all things like Marvel. I'm a huge Disney guy. You know, I've got lots of different fandoms. But one of the things that I really enjoy, because we're talking about like that intersection of faith and fandom, I love thinking about that intersection in the spaces where there's definitely no God. I like these existential comics and stuff that exploit this. Hey, everything does kind of seem like there's no meaning and it's all pointless. And for me, how do I wrestle with that as a Christian, thinking about myself without putting that into a comic that's not there? You know, so we're trying to be genuine with what the material says, but then also genuine to ourselves. We're kind of talking about that intersection.
Yeah. Well, go for it, Christian.
Sorry,
I'm
I didn't mean to
Christian.
start a whole thing.
I joined the podcast, about 100-some episodes thereabouts?
Yeah.
So I wasn't there, at the beginning, but
The real beginning.
Been having a lot of fun since then. My primary fandom, Imagine How, there's Spider-Man. That's why he's my avatar for the show. Also big into anime, movies, Star Wars, Star Trek, all over the place there when it comes to sci-fi. So, I recently found out, I think yesterday, that was apparently Godzilla's birthday, according to the commercials I was hearing.
Yes, it was Godzilla's
Comet. So,
how old is Godzilla?
Yeah, I was at some nice place with some college friends and got to see Destroy All Monsters, my favorite Godzilla movie, because it's a crossover. Well, yeah, of course I love crossovers. So there we go.
All right.
Awesome. And I'm Kevin Schaefer. I joined a few months ago because Will and I have known each other for a while, so he invited me on. And I've been really having a great time since then. Fandoms are kind of all over. You can see two represented right here, Lord of the Rings and DC. But then, Star Wars movies, DC, Marvel, kind of all over. I really I think we have really good, respectful conversations with each other and exploring those ideas. And it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah. Thanks, Kevin. Yeah. So Kevin and I go back. We both from the Triangle area and have been involved with Carolina Comic Con for a good long time. We've been on some panels before, even before this podcast. And so we brought Kevin on because we know he's a person of faith, but also has very good geek cred. He's got it. And I think kind of our goal with our podcast and what we want to do in this space at North Carolina Comic Con is to just share openly that, you have permission to be both a geek and a person of faith. Often we tend to like think that it has to be an either or you have to choose one or the other. But we're like, no, you can be a geek and a person of faith, and they can be a part of your life. And our posture with this podcast is to show and model for others. And often, I don't know if you guys know this or have experienced it, but often in fandom and the geekverse, there can be some toxicity. I don't know if you've ever experienced maybe. Yeah. And unhealthy conversations. So we try to model for people of faith and of all, wherever you are on the spectrum of faith or in your fandom, that, we can have healthy conversations around these things, even if we disagree, even if we're like, no, you have a bad idea, Joshua, about The Last Jedi or whatever. We can still be friends and brothers, even if we disagree about some fandoms. And so we try to model that for others. Again, just having fun to geek out with each other. And our origin story is that Joshua heard me on another podcast, invited me on his podcast called The Whole Church to really talk about faith and science stuff. And then in the midst of that conversation, we started talking about comic books and sci-fi and Star Wars. And you're like, you know what? We should do a podcast about geeky stuff. I'm like, there's some out there, and we'll give resources at the end of other people who do this stuff well. But he said, you should do this podcast. It's like, not just me. How about you, Joshua? You be the leader. You edit. You do the work, and I'll just talk in the microphone.
I edit Christian leads.
Right.
No, what was funny about the origin too, and we talked about the origins a few times. This actually in our show, we're doing like a year of origins. We're exploring like the cosmology and the beginnings of all of our favorite universes. We did like Marvel. I think we did Star Trek, right? Yep. Star Trek, Star Wars. Recently, we did like a Dawn of the Jedi review. But no, when we talk about our origins, we usually don't mention like the reason we got on the comic book stuff in the Whole Church podcast, which is like ecumenical, how can churches not be jerks to each other kind of premise. And I always start with a silly question. And so many times people are like, Josh, you got to cut that silly question, man. This is a serious show. And I'm like, nah, I love the silliness. And I do research for the silly question. I was like, this guy likes comic books. So the silly question is going to be like, would you rather Spider-Man throw a pie in your face or, something silly, just stupid? And then we actually started talking about it. No, it was, who's your favorite Great Lakes Avenger? Was that it?
I think that's it. Yeah. Favorite Great Lakes.
And it was just so fun because then it turned into like a real conversation. And I was like, I guess we should keep doing this. The silly part was my favorite part.
Keep geeking out with each other and do that. So yeah, it was an excuse to hang out on the internet and do those things. So that's kind of our posture and what we try to do. And Christian, I don't know if you want to add anything else and kind of why we do what we do and what's the purpose of this podcast and really kind of this panel too, the show.
Yeah, well, you hit a lot of the really good points. Fandom kind of sucks sometimes because
some
fans
people
get a little
far.
They get a little too attached to what they love and aren't willing to hear new ideas, or if there are really bad ideas being done, they get super aggressive about it rather than offering constructive criticism. So I'm doing my best right now with the current Amazing Spider-Man run to be a very positive person. I don't like them, but I know there are a ton of people. It's selling well. People are loving the books. Like there's people in this audience right now that love what's happening. So I can't look at them and say, hey, I hate you because you have a different opinion than me, because I feel so strongly they're being character assassinated. Well, you're enjoying the characters for who they are. So that's where we stand.
Yeah. So we have a room full of around 20, 30 people. Just lift up some fandoms that you can get out. Your favorite fan. Just lift it up. What's your favorite one? Out loud.
G.I. Joe.
G.I. Joe. Awesome. Others. Transformers. Nice. There's got to be others out there. Comic books. Batman. All right. Others.
One Piece fans?
One Piece fans?
Hey, there we go.
Ahsoka, Star Wars. Anybody like that one? Yeah, we see some hands.
Anybody geek out on Across the Bifrost, my favorite Marvel themed podcast?
Anybody? There you go. There's Ryan. That's right.
Why are we filming?
Yeah, that's right. Let's see what else we got there. Oh,
yeah!
There we go. Did you do that just because you knew what Joshua was going to do?
That's the real reason we're here today, to talk about Star Trek.
No, it's not. Well, we're talking a little bit. Loki. Anybody watch the Loki series out there? Yeah, good.
Stranger Things.
What's that? South Park. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah,
other anime stuff. What's back there? South Park. There you go. Cool.
Stranger Things.
Stranger Things. Always Sunny in Philadelphia. And that's what we said, that everybody geeks out on something. And so whether it could be like mainstay, Secret Timeline, Marvel Universe, or it could be like a deep cut comic book hero, or comedies, or there you go. or sitcoms or anime. There's a lot gaming. There's so much. There's no shortage of content in terms of what we geek out on. And we do our best to not geek shame anybody. Say, what are you geeking out on? Let me know more. We're more curious about the questions of why is this appealing to you? Why do you find this funny? Why do you find this helping you go deeper into life and the big questions? And so yeah, that's what we share. That's what we do.
Yeah, that's one of the things I really love about our show. It's funny because I feel like I was really involved in the beginning, and like these days I do like 2 episodes a month or something. Like I edit, but
yeah, we have like 12.
Christian's like the star now.
Yeah.
But it's so fun because we started this with whole church, different things, and now we have 12 different hosts. We have some, I would say, very progressive Christian thinkers, as well as some really conservative Christian thinkers. We've got people who don't like The Last Jedi. We got people who love The Last Jedi. The only thing I think we don't have, I have yet to see anyone who is a supporter or defender of the live action Avatar: The Last Airbender movie. I've not seen that yet.
Any fans out there?
Does that exist?
Oh,
Does that even exist?
no.
They were burned at the stake.
That's right.
Christian, no. The conservative can't say that.
Again, what are we modeling here? Christian, I'm going to ask Kevin a question now.
Yes,
Kevin,
yeah.
All right, so your avatar for our show is Kanan, right?
Yeah.
Kanan from Rebels, and you
Yep.
watched Ahsoka. What were some of the themes of Ahsoka? I assume you finished it. There's going to be mild spoilers here for if you haven't seen this. We're trying to do big time spoilers, but what were some themes in that show, or even Rebels itself, that connected with you, that helped you go deeper in some of the bigger questions we all wrestle with?
Yeah, definitely. So, Kanan is my avatar. I've got an Ahsoka keychain on my wheelchair. 2 of my favorite characters from Star Wars, and like little background on myself is like, I'm one of the more progressive on the show, and and I like that we have those respectful conversations because I go to a very progressive church that's LGBT inclusive, and and I like that we bring up those topics and we're not afraid to discuss. And so, what I like about Kanan and Ahsoka in particular is that they adhere to what it means to be a Jedi, but they, because of their experience, particularly Ahsoka, with her experiences with the Jedi Order and how she, was like a devout follower for a long time, and then, I don't want to go huge spoilers here. Go back to Clone Wars to see why she leaves and why she has this fallout with the more dogmatic principles. And so that resonates with me. But she also doesn't turn on that side completely. She is able to become a Jedi in her own right, find his own path. And Kanan similar too, because he's a survivor of Order 66, and he never really was able to complete his training in the old order, and he had to learn just to survive for the longest time. And then one of my favorite things about him too is the relationship he has with Hera, who's one of my also favorite characters in Rebels and Ahsoka, is that because you look at the movies and how their Jedi are forbidden to have romance and have all this, and you look at and you're well, because Anakin has that and he falls down the dark side, but Kanan is proof that no, you can still care for people, and actually that becomes a strength for him rather than a weakness. And you can have that kind of caring, deep relationship both on a romantic level and the friendships and the mentor apprentice relationship he has with Ezra, and it does not destroy him. It ends up being his greatest strength. And I don't really want to spoil what happens there. Just go watch Rebels if you haven't. But those themes really carry throughout Ahsoka, and we got into that a lot on an episode a few weeks ago when we were talking about the series as a whole. And you have kind of the instead of just this black and white Jedi and Sith, it starts to explore Force users who have different ideas about what their purpose is and how they, Baylan Skoll is a prime example, Ahsoka is a prime example, and so I really liked how the show explored those themes, and I think that resonated with me particularly, my history with church and stuff, and so I love being on this podcast, and and also I just want to add this because Will, you were talking about earlier about there's giving people permission to be geek and a person of faith at the same time. When I tell people that I have a group from church and we do a Star Wars RPG every month, some people outside are like, "What church do you go to?" They're just surprised that because I'm sure many people have been through the D&D satanic and all that kind of stuff. And And we're able to, on the show, talk about horror properties and a really diverse range of stories and examine the themes within those. So that's what I really like being a part of here.
Yeah, well said, Kevin. That's good. And I think with Ahsoka, it does give this broad spectrum of kind of the Jedi religion from, it doesn't, in terms of their experience with the Force, there's different ways people in the actual Star Wars universe wrap their identity around that, and whether the same way it mirrors kind of how we do church or communities of faith today. So I think it really does lift up that. And if you watch, how many of you watched the whole series of Ahsoka all the way through? Yeah, they're baptismal imageries of like dying to oneself and rising to new life. There's a blatant like Jonah reference of hopping in a whale and going somewhere, like all those things. I'm pointing at the TV like that DiCaprio meme, like, yeah, see it, and so all those things are pretty blatant, but I think it also gets to the nuance of how we handle life and relationships and disappointment. And when we are hurt by faith communities or just community in general, and then how do we find healing? It really goes into that, and have lots of lightsaber fights. And that's what I'm there for. Really what I'm there for. Do you want to go into like One Piece now? Talk a little bit about One Piece. Are you Christian? Are you a One Piece person?
Oh, indeed I am.
All right. What are some themes and what be there? Like, I was not a One Piece person until I got into this podcast. I didn't realize that this is a manga that's been going on since the 90s.
Yep.
And the anime has like thousands of episodes of anime cartoons, and they just made the live action on Netflix. How many of you seen live action on Netflix, One Piece? How many of you read any of the manga? Oh yeah, there we go. Some of the anime. Yeah. They've tried to lure me in, but it's a long haul. Christian, what are some themes there in One Piece that lift up kind of what we're doing here, and how do we go deeper into questions?
It goes big into freedom and like what personal freedom means to people versus, well, how far do we go with that? What is acceptable to be free and what is not acceptable to be free? Is a rigid government, can you have freedom there? Or is there a way, total anarchy, the way to go? And one of the things Luffy, main character, is really big on is respecting other people's rights to do what they want so long as they're not hurting anybody. And that's something that the church do a lot better overall when it comes to things that aren't sinful. When it comes to things that I personally don't like, well, they're not sinful, so I don't get to say, you don't get to watch this. You don't get to listen to that. Like, let people love what they love within reason. And that's one of the things you kind of learn with Luffy. Like, hey, if you're real excited about what you're doing, if you're having fun, you're bringing joy to other people, guess what? Who's your biggest supporter? It's going to be him and his crew. If you're doing something that causes someone to lose their freedom, you're their biggest enemy. You're public enemy number one. They will declare war on the entire world if it means respecting someone else's freedom. And I really appreciate that. I served someone who destroyed the entire world's sense of control just to bring us back to life.
Yeah, and the premise is around like pirates, and that's your favorite fandom, Joshua. Pirates. You really like pirates.
Do love pirates.
You do love pirates.
And
so here's an anime I'm fan or wrap around. What is it about the pirates and this particular crew on this ship and their quest that appeals to you in this series?
Well, Luffy just is me, so that helps a lot, you know.
Cool. Like I'm Luke Skywalker.
No. I started this series, the show as a whole, because I'm not really a big anime guy, but back in high school, one of my friends was like, "You got to watch this show because I think you might be the main character." And then I watch it. He like starts off bursting out of a barrel for some reason, just starts punching people. That he's like, "I need meat," and I'm like, you know what? Okay, yeah, I feel it. I like this guy. But no, for me, piracy is you got to make a distinction, really. We're thinking of like 16 to 1800 centuries pirates, which is kind of what we think of when we're doing this show. It's kind of a mock-up of that. There are obviously very terrible, awful players at work. That's just how it works. But in the world, like real history, we lived in a lot of suppressive governments, different things like that. And if you look into the history of piracy, you'll see the place that women had the most agency was going to be on a pirate ship. That's why a few women literally just hijacked a ship and went out to sea, because if I can't in my own country live how I want to live, you know what I'm going to do? Screw that country. I'm going to go become a pirate. Pirates would often free slaves because they're going to work for you, because otherwise they're going to be slaves. So they come and join a pirate crew. So you get like really diverse groups when you look at the history of pirates, real time in American history. And that same theme, even though it's a very different world in One Piece, is what you see. You see Luffy's going through the government suppressive. All these things are evil. Yeah, there still are evil pirates, but then you have Luffy who's literally like, no, I wanted to say that I'm the king of the pirates and screw everyone who's being bad. Like, it's just so basic sometimes. But then you get like recently we're about to drop an episode about the Drum Island arc of the anime and manga. Without any spoilers, he's recruiting another crew member. I know that you talked a lot about that with me recently. Is like the parallel how Luffy called people out to how Jesus called his disciples out. And thinking about that in context of what happens on Drum Island, if you're familiar with the anime or manga, man, he calls someone friend who's never heard that word before. He bleeds for someone who has never seen someone care about it before. And just thinking of that in context of you putting Luffy as doing that call story, it shook me because I'm like rewatching it. I'm like, oh man, how powerful the word friend can really be.
Yeah. I love that. And in One Piece, I've dabbled a little bit in kind of the anime, but more the Netflix live action. I love team books, whether it's X-Men, whether it's Justice League, whether it's the Avengers. I like team books because, individual heroes on their own have superpowers, they have gifts, they have abilities they use for a greater purpose out in the world. But often there's a threat that is greater than them. So they have to bring their team together that is bigger than the actual threat that's coming. And so I love to see how those group dynamics, team dynamics work with each other in these books and movies. And when I was watching One Piece, I couldn't help but go to Jesus calling disciples for the first time. Come and follow me. I got something away. They didn't. They just dropped their nets and followed. Somebody respected them enough or looked at them and said, you're worthy enough to come and be with me. I value you enough. I need your gifts. And so within this One Piece, he's calling his team together. He's calling his crew for a greater purpose, greater than themselves. And no one's really called them before or looked at them as to want them to be a part of a family. They're these kind of loose cannons around the way. But then, like, how do you call that together and become a family? And we see that kind of with us here, as we're a group of hosts from different backgrounds and traditions, and yet we come together for a greater purpose. And I know all of us have different families and friends and communities that you're a part of that you value, that help you be a better person who you're called to be. All right, Kevin, down there on the end.
Yeah.
Have you been watching Loki?
No, not yet, but I would. I know. I was gonna say, can I bring up some of the horror stuff for a minute?
Absolutely.
Okay, so who here watches like any of the Mike Flanagan properties? Like, some people like Haunting of Hill House and stuff. I bring this up because Christian and I have had some really good conversations about these, and this is another thing where I think a lot of churches say like, oh, you can't watch horror or anything like that, and I've actually found some of the most enlightening spiritual conversations and topics come across in a lot of horror properties, especially the Mike Flanagan. And I use Midnight Mass as an example, which is a great show, highly recommend. And Christian and I have talked about this, and you can look at that on paper and think oh, that's a criticism of any type of religion stuff, and really it's not, because it is the basic premise is this series that's set on this off the coast island, and there's this religious cult that is amassing a huge, planning a big massacre and controlling everyone there. But what I really like about Mike Flanagan's storytelling is he counteracts that with characters who are genuine people of faith, and saying that yes, there are the religious zealots who kind of twist and contort scriptures to manipulate people, and then there are others who actually use it for loving and community. And I mean, we've talked about it before, but Mike Flanagan's an atheist, and I think he's written a lot of Christian characters better than even some Christian filmmakers. Because he's not going with trying to say one is better than the other, but he's trying to say that no, there are people who have different beliefs and can still be respectful toward one another, and he does it there, and especially in Midnight Club as well. I think really well. But sorry to go off topic for that, because I'm behind on Loki. I know I've heard it's great, but I do want to bring that up because that's another thing where I believe that those kind of taboo topics, in a lot of churches that say you shouldn't watch those, or I think actually have a lot of merit to them, and we've had great discussions on those properties.
Yeah, one thing I love about fandoms in general. So we're talking about the Mike Flanagan and how he handles Christians, Catholics, etc. Talking about One Piece, who are the pirates, who's the government. A lot of times our fandoms and the good writers anyway challenge our labels. You know, it's not pirates are the good guys, government's the bad guys. If you watch One Piece, because you know there are government players who are like, oh wow, that's if the government was that, it would be good. And then there's pirates that you're like, oh yeah, that's right, pirates are still bad guys. And then you're watching these, you know, same thing with like the church, not church. Thinking about X-Men, being a mutant or not does not make bad guy. You know, like these labels, especially for someone who did grow up way more conservative than I am now. I'm still pretty conservative. But you know, I grew up with a lot of people doing that kind of dismissive argument of, oh, I don't like what you said, so now I'm just you're a Marxist. Well, you're not really engaging in conversation now. You're just calling a name and then moving on. And that's one thing that fandom just doesn't allow you to do. You can't say, oh, you're a pirate, you're a good guy or bad guy in One Piece, because that's just not the case.
Yeah, and I think also how we handle our fandom online and message boards can also dictate in terms of that kind of boldness, in terms of we hide behind anonymous message boards and lash out at people or smash the dislike button on people or try to cancel. I think what we're trying to do here is have conversations with us around and model that for others, even if we do come from different backgrounds and things. And same way that we're having here, creating this space, be in a room to share what we like and geek out, and then hopefully have a meal with somebody, to have a conversation, to ask questions, be more curious about who they are and what they're geeking out, rather than quick to label or the danger of the single story, just to label them. That's who you are, and that's all you're about. There's more to me than just, you know, my thoughts on The Last Jedi, but also like you know, in terms of how much I adore Star Wars, and that was the first movie I saw in the theater in 1977 as a 5-year-old. I know it's hard to believe I'm that old. Stop. But yeah, that's a big part of who I am. So I have this, you know, a long time with this story, and so the reason I sometimes get frustrated with it is because it's so much close to my identity and who I understand to be. I think Faith can be that way too. So.
Yeah, Will brought up a really good point. It's so easy to hate something. Like, people have been following the show knows that there's only 2 things I rate a negative 1 out of 10. That's The Last Jedi and Spider-Man One More Day, where he sells his marriage to Mephisto. You know, what a good character should do. You know, because he's the hero. But if all I ever do is focus on how bad those things are, in my opinion, I deny someone, like, I don't know how, but there's someone out there who might enjoy One More Day because of the stories that it led to. Sure, you can have that. I'm not a fan of how that happened, but I can have a conversation with them and then just say, oh, you like this? Well, we have nothing in common, even though before we might have been talking about, you know, we're both Braves fans, or, you know, we saw the newest Star Wars movie or whatever. And then suddenly when there's something that's a point of contention, we can just look and go, oh, well, that defines you versus everything else we had beforehand. I'm going to get rid of you from my life. That way I only keep the good things I like. That's not how people work. There's not a single person in this world I 100% agree with, not even myself.
And the reason I brought Loki, I think it's a good show. Yes, within the MCU, as the Disney Plus streams, it's my favorite right now because of season 2. It's become my most favorite kind of online streaming MCU property because of the story they're telling. But this whole like understanding of alternate timelines, multiverse, but also a sacred timeline. Yeah, it's fun sci-fi, it's fun speculation, but yet they're also leaning into their relationships, their friends, who's important to them or not, which often what apocalyptic genre does anyway, whether it's Walking Dead or Robot Apocalypse or Aliens, whatever, it reveals to you what's important to you. And so within the show of Loki, it's revealing what he's really looking for in life. What is he really longing for in life? And then I find it super ironic. I was talking with Ryan about this not too long ago, that here is the god of mischief, the god of lies. He's the only one in this season who's trying to be a truth teller. He's trying to share with others what's really going on. And of course, they're skeptical and believe in him or not, because he's the god of lies, god of mischief. But he's like, look, he's the only one trying to tell the truth, to point to something bigger that's going on, that there's a real threat. And so how they do that nuance with one episode to go, I can't wait to see where it lands and how they wrap up the season.
So going backwards a little bit.
Okay.
We were talking about like the labels thing. I also want to say it does sometimes work backwards, where you can assume someone's assuming something. And that's one thing that happened to me on the show that really kind of humbled me, I suppose. I'm a huge Disney guy, Disnerd, if you will. 100 Years thing's a huge deal to me. I've been really geeking out on all of that. So excited for Wish coming out next year. The way they're doing the cell shading, like the animation is just incredible. But we did an episode once, and someone was going on. He's like, I'm going to talk about why I don't like new Disney stuff. And in my mind, I'm like, I roll. This is going to be conservative Christian telling me why Disney only likes progressive things now, and it's all going to be about that. And he gets on, and it's like, actually, they're trying to say the power is yours now, and they're robbing you of understanding that sometimes you just can't do it on your own. And I was like, oh, wait a minute, that's actually a good point. And I just assumed that you were this other kind of person labeling Disney. So, watch your assumptions when someone disagrees about something. Some people might have a good reason not to like The Last Jedi. I haven't heard one yet, but they might have it.
We still need to have that conversation. Yeah, Joshua, I forgive you of my suspicions.
No, and I was going to say, like, I wrote reviews throughout college when I was working for the school newspaper, and it was a lot of fun, but, like, I got to a certain point where I got kind of tired of writing any negative reviews because, like, I was doing it for a while, and, like, when you're kind of immersed in that particular culture, you get it, like, it can lead to a desire to, have this, like, controversial opinion just to get hits or whatever. And I got really tired of that. So these days, like, even if I don't like something, I just don't dwell on it. I choose to instead just focus on the things I like. Because, like, for instance, like, MCU Phase 4, like, I loved Black Widow. I loved Black Panther 2. Some others, I really did not like Love and Thunder, but I don't want to, like, dismiss anyone who enjoys it, because if you enjoy that, that's great. Like, and I've just stopped, like, and that's the thing. In order, I think, to have more productive conversations, like, yeah, I see these articles, like, the articles I really hate at the end of the year is when people do, like, the worst movies of 2023. I'm like, what does that do for anyone? I mean, like, it's all you're, even if you didn't like something, if you're devoting that much energy to, like, putting down someone else's work and, like, drawing that out, it just doesn't feel good for me anymore. So I've instead put more energy toward promoting the things I like and writing my own stories.
Yeah.
At the risk of never being invited on Across the Bifrost, I did not care for Love and Thunder either. Love you, Ryan.
No, and that's but that's the thing. Like, there's definitely going to be things, even in universes we love, there's going to be properties we still really enjoy those, others are not. And that's why I just like that thing. I don't like those opinions that are just like, oh, Disney is ruining everything. I'm like, I can't categorize, dozens of movies and shows and properties into one banner and have one single opinion on that. I'm like, I look at it more individual properties. I'm like, I might like this one, might not like this one as much, and that's okay. But, like, I think it's just, it becomes really toxic when people get so hung up on, like, they hate this entire direction or this entire universe. And I'm just like, we have so much today in fandom to enjoy. If you don't like a lot of the Disney Star Wars stuff right now, that's okay. You can watch the older stuff, or you can watch, like, there's so much out there you can enjoy. So I think we, like, as a culture, it's so easy to dwell on the negative and like they produce those clickbait articles and stuff. Whereas it gets more productive to just highlight the things we love and share that with others.
Nice. Yeah, that's where crossovers have a redeeming nature of things. I believe personally. So thinking of Spider-Man: No Way Home, I've known as Josh with the wrong opinions, and I'm sorry, but I never liked Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man. I was like, this isn't Spider-Man. This is just a Superman movie, and the main character is doing Spider-Man physical things, but the character himself did not act like Spider-Man. He wasn't really a smart ass. He wasn't really like any of the stuff that he was supposed to be. Whatever. Anyway, but then No Way Home happened, and all of a sudden I see these other Spider-Man join up. And the one that I actually like, I really like Tom Holland. I think he's a high school kid. He's supposed to be a high school kid. He's got the smart kind of attitude. He's like, okay, this is funny. And then these other guys come in. I'm like, oh, wait a minute. These other guys I dismissed are also just equally as much Spider-Man in different points in their lives. And I was like, oh man, I misjudged things and need to rewatch these. And then the other people I know that were like, oh, Tom Holland's stupid, were like, oh man, hey, I actually do see where this is Spider-Man. I'm like, yeah. And that's like that crossover, that redeeming nature. You see these things, and that's where, like, some of our new shows, when we get legendary characters brought in, it's like, oh, okay. It kind of can redeem some of that for us, I think.
So what you're saying, Joshua, is that you can grow and evolve as a person?
How about that?
Yeah.
Unprecedented. Yeah. Yeah, and I also want to look up before I forget. There's other people who do this kind of stuff too. We're not Cinematic Geekology. There's Faith and Phantom. Our friend Hector Mirai has some cards up here and some books that he wanted to give out. He often goes to Comic Cons. Couldn't make this one, but goes around. He has a great podcast and does devotionals and book. What he calls himself is Chicken Soup for the Soul for the geeky Christian Soul is kind of the books he writes with devotionals around these things. And then I'll make a suggestion, recommendation that whatever in your faith community you're a part of, a while back in my church in South Carolina, I started a God Loves Geeks book club. And basically what we did is we grabbed a graphic novel or a comic book or a science fiction novel, and we read it together and then discussed it like a book group. When we go see a movie together and then talk about it afterwards, pretty much what we're doing with Systematic Geekology. But yeah, you also have permission that if you want to start a geek club or a God Loves Geeks book club or group in your congregation or community of faith, I encourage you to do so, just to give people permission, because I guarantee you, where 2 or 3 gather, there are geeks there. And so you can say, come geek out with me and hang out, and then figure out, what you love, and then also what are the questions that these stories are wrestling with, and be a part of that. Guys, any other recommendations in terms of, stories or story arcs or groups to be a part of that they can go deeper into? Before we do like a quick Q&A.
Well, I'm going to go first. Star Wars Lower Decks. I'm pretty sure the season
Star
finale
Wars,
is today.
Star Wars,
Star
Lower
Trek.
Decks. Yeah,
The good one. Lower Decks.
Okay, yeah, there you go.
No, the season finale I think came out today, was it? Or is it tomorrow? Ryan, do you know? Because you mentioned it earlier. You're the one of the band that
He was
shouted it out.
picking on you. He was picking on you. It came out Thursday.
So it's out, and I need to watch it. I haven't seen the last episode. I saw the second to last episode.
Okay.
But so this season they've been wrestling with, the show's called Lower Decks. They're like the cleanup crew behind the real crew, basically. And this time they all got
animated show.
Yeah.
Yep.
And this time they all got promotions, and they're no longer technically Lower Decks, and they're struggling with what that means for their identity and their friendship and who they are within Starfleet. And it's been pretty interesting, really fun to watch them on that journey, and it's just a really funny show. It's just one of the few things that never fail to make me laugh. Other recommendations: Ninja Soar by Jason Aaron. We found him at a Heroes Con earlier this year. Ninja Soar. It is a ninja dinosaur. It is silly, ridiculous, fun. If you just like,
I don't think it's Jason Aaron. It's
No. It's what's his name? You're right.
Yeah.
I'm
Ninja
gonna
Soar.
find his name.
Okay.
I think it wasn't Jason though. Man, I
Right,
don't
like
know.
they're taking us
Yeah.
there.
Hey, listen, we'll just pretend like that's it. And then
Sometimes
everyone
not
will
just a
find
wrong
Ninja Soar.
opinions, it's just a wrong.
There you are.
Yeah.
Jason Horn. There you go. I told you it was a Jason. And then Scotty Young's Middle West. I just picked up the omnibus last week. I'm almost through it. It's been a week, and I worked 60 hours, and still somehow I've almost finished that. It is so stinking good.
We're proud of you.
He says it's his most personal work, and I was like, how is a little fantasy story with trolls and demons going to be your most personal thing? And I'm like, oh, I get it. I get it. It's good.
I'm going to do a little different what I normally do. This actually happened to me last night. The power went out at the beach house I was staying at with college friends. So what did we do? We panicked because there was nothing electronic we could do. The internet wasn't working. We had to spend time with one another. And what we did is we actually went outside on the deck. And for the first time I can remember doing so forever, I just looked at the sky. And since every other house had lost power, the light pollution was like next to nothing.
Yeah.
Got to see a brilliant, beautiful view of the galaxy out there. It was just a really good moment, just seeing the things I don't look at anymore because I'm so consumed with other things. The wondrous things God made out there.
Nice. Do you have a recommendation?
I got a podcast recommendation. I don't know if you guys should listen to Inside of You with Michael Rosenbaum. He's the guy who played Lex Luthor on Smallville. And he does this podcast where, because most of the podcasts I listen to are very like conversation oriented and I like just human stories. And so he interviews everyone from actors, writers, creators, like both friends he knows and then just other celebrities in the entertainment world. And the idea behind it is like getting inside of you. So like not just the surface level, like, oh, how did your career start? But like he asks them really personal questions about, growing up and how did they want to become an actor or writer or whatever. And they get into like really heavy topics. And I've been really enjoying that. So like I've listened to episodes with like Will Wheaton and Brandon Routh recently, several others. And so that's a really good one. You need they're usually like hour-long episodes. But yeah, those are the kind of podcasts I typically gravitate toward.
No shortage of geeky content and no shortage of podcasts are there. So many cool stuff. Now, out there to our crowd here, any recommendations or things you geek out on that you think lift up good religious theological themes that you think would be edifying for you? Yes, sir.
Well, I'm going to go with actually 201 one old and one very old.
Okay.
Doctor Who.
Yes.
Yeah.
We have some Doctor Who fans. Doctor Who. There we go.
And the
60th
one very old one, Dark Shadows.
Ah, there you go.
That's showing my age now. But
That's
the,
right.
The way that the main character was a vampire.
Yeah.
But he wasn't the evil vampire. You know, it was just
Yeah.
the whole, he had family, he had heritage, and people had to think, this is not what we normally think of.
Yeah. Yeah. And that kind of the original anti-hero or what you
Yeah.
don't normally think of, lifting up Dark Shadows and Doctor Who. Yeah, Doctor Who, deep fandom that has lots of great things. I know, Josh, you've talked about it before. We have a friend, a professor, New Testament professor, James McGrath, who wrote a book on Doctor Who and theology. And so, yeah, check that one out.
Doctor
if you want
Who,
to go
some of the things he's done, the episode I think of when a good man goes to war.
Man.
That when you think of the idea of family,
No, you did it. Yeah.
family in a position you need to take and says, I don't want to do this, but because you did this, I am being forced to do this to save my family,
Yeah.
to save what I consider my family.
Yeah, the Doctor being almost timeless does give him a lot of like Jesus moments, and that's one of the big ones. And ironically, that was the 11th Doctor, I think, and that's like my absolute second least favorite. Actually, I don't like the third one either. Third Doctor, not it. But Peter Capaldi had another episode. We were talking about like those Jesus moments where he's with the Zygons, which is like the shapeshifters. It's like what if Secret Invasion was good?
Okay.
Sorry.
Hey, I see nods.
But
Yeah.
but he has this moment where because it's kind of like memory, sci-fi reason, neither side really knows who they are, and they both have a button, and it's going to basically eliminate the other side. It's like, here, this is a mini scale of what war is. You're going to kill everybody, and you're not guaranteed it's not your own. And it was just one of those moments where he breaks down what war is and the human condition of why we even would want something like this. And you're like, well, okay. And you're just kind of left there with this like insight of, oh, this is humanity. And sometimes humanity isn't great. Yeah. Humans are idiots. I agree with the audience.
Yeah, what does it mean to be human? That's what are these properties and fandoms really wrestling with? Like, it goes deep into that. And the same stuff we wrestle with in our paid communities too. What does it mean to be human? And at the expense of others at times too. So how do we value the other person as the image of God in our midst too? Yeah. Anything else out there to wrap up? Lee.
Yeah, one thing I've been geeking out on recently is this manga series called Kaiju number 8.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So let's
Kaiju
repeat
number
that. Kaiju number 8 is,
yes.
is a manga series that Lee's geeking out on. And what is that bringing out for you?
Well, I've read through the first volume of it, and it really identified with the main character before he becomes Kaiju number 8, when he's got everything he sort of needs, but he's still not happy. He's still wrestling with that existential, instead of just being the guy who cleans up after the fights of the monsters and everything, because he's basically a glorified not really even a glorified janitor.
Right.
He's just a janitor who cleans up after the people who kill the monsters, and then he kind of becomes a smaller but very insanely powerful kaiju.
Interesting.
And
Christian,
the
you're
anime
reading
is
that?
coming out fairly soon. Yeah, I'm caught up to the manga. It's it has some highs and lows. Ultimately high than low. Really good stuff if you're like a kaiju fan. Yeah, as I go for it.
Fun.
Oh, and also, I don't watch a ton of anime, but mainly, not anything against the medium. It's just like so many are so time consuming and go on forever. But if you, has anyone been watching Zom 100? I know Kyle is getting out, but like, anyway, so this is a great one if you want it. Like, I know we're technically past Halloween season, but still, it's only 9 episodes right now on Netflix. There's a live action one as well. I'm just watching the anime right now, but the concept is that you have this guy who works at an anime CD production company, and he is so overworked and hates his job and hates the mundane day-to-day. And then the zombie apocalypse happens, and he's liberated because he's like, I don't have to go to work anymore. And so he writes down a bucket list of things he wants to do now that he's free, and he just has to not get eaten by zombies in the process. But
So
it's a
good.
brilliant satire.
Yeah, there's so many creative things out there. I love it. Well, geeks. Glad you were able to come here and be with us. Thanks for being a part of this. I want to share that you can follow us on all the platforms. There's a few we're not on, but Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, Captivate, all those things.
Yeah, Facebook and them, they have our link tree too. So if you want to like follow the podcast or see all the other things are at, you can find that. And then we have a table out there with some QR codes and stuff, so you can find. You can just scan it. So you don't have to go searching. Sometimes that's easy.
Yep, follow us, like, smash, all that stuff. And today is Gene's birthday, so let's say happy birthday to Gene. Gene, you grab that Faith and Fandom book right there, the blue one. Give that to Gene. Yeah, there you go. Happy birthday, buddy. Yeah, so awesome. Thank you all. We'll see you around on the floor. And hey, Geek and Me honors the Geek and You. Yeah.
This was an Anazao Ministries podcast. If you enjoyed this show and would like to learn more about our network, be sure to check out the Anazao Ministries Podcast Network.